This is no ordinary apple, my dear. It's a magic wishing apple.
A wishing apple?
Yes!
Picture this. South Park creators waking up one morning and choosing absolute chaos. In their crosshairs, Disney's catastrophic Snow White remake and its controversial star, Rachel Zegler.
One bite and all your dreams will come true.
You offer it to me freely. In place of the patriarchy, you would have a queen! Not white, but diverse, inclusive, and equitable!
What followed wasn't just a parody, it was a cultural execution that sent shockwaves through Hollywood and turned Disney's prized remake into a cautionary tale about what happens when studios ignore their core audience. The nightmare begins. You check under the bed and make sure there's no Disney executives under there. The animated hit series didn't just mock the Snow White disaster, they turned it into a full-blown nightmare sequence. Cartman dreams about his friends being...
They did not hold back.
Now, tell me exactly what it is you're afraid of.
I keep having the same dream. Everywhere I look, people are being replaced.
Okay, and who do you think is going to have you replaced?
Them. The puppet masters.
Systematically replaced with diverse characters, while a Kathleen Kennedy parody character repeats her chilling mantra, "Make it more lame." The scene brilliantly captures what many viewers felt watching Disney's recent remakes. Beloved characters and stories transformed into unrecognizable versions of themselves. South Park creators Trey Parker and Matt Stone have never been ones to pull punches, but their takedown of Disney's approach to modernizing classics struck a particularly powerful chord with audiences who were already questioning the studio's creative decisions. The fictional Woke White, the Reinvention, featured in the episode, didn't just parody the Snow White remake.
The last time I had the dream, I was walking down the school hallway. And then I see Butters, and he's like, "Hey, Eric, you want to see what my mom packed me for lunch?" And that's when I start to notice that something's wrong.
It exposed the fundamental disconnect between Hollywood executives and the audiences they claim to serve. Characters in the parody constantly lecture others about privilege and patriarchy, while the Disney stock price plummets in Cartman's nightmare, a not-so-subtle commentary on the real-world consequence of prioritizing political messaging over storytelling. The Zegler effect. How one star tanked a franchise. Before a single frame of Snow White hit theaters, Rachel Zegler had already alienated millions of potential viewers. In interviews that quickly went viral for all the wrong reasons, she dismissed the original story's romance as problematic. There is a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her. She proudly announced the prince barely appeared in her version, adding that all of Andrew's scenes could get cut? Who knows?
Everyone I cared about has been systematically replaced. And finally, I want to scream, and I'm like, why are they replacing every single character with someone who is diverse? But then Kenny's like, it's not our fault, it's because of Kathleen Kennedy. But then Kathleen Kennedy's just like, fuck it, make it more lame. And everyone in town is like, no, please, Kathleen Kennedy, stop ruining everything.
It's Hollywood, baby. These weren't casual remarks. They were direct attacks on the very heart of the fairy tale that millions grew up loving. For generations, Snow White represented a timeless story about good triumphing over evil through the power of love. Zegler's comments suggested she not only misunderstood this appeal, but actively disdained it. Industry insiders report Disney executives were stunned by her comments, but failed to control the damage. Marketing teams reportedly scrambled to pivot promotional strategies, focusing less on Zegler's interviews and more on visual spectacle. But the damage was done. Audiences had already heard the star of Snow White effectively telling them their childhood memories were problematic. Even more damaging were Zegler's unearthed social media posts, where she reportedly told supporters of a certain political persuasion to go away and never know peace, effectively insulting half of her potential audience before they ever bought a ticket.
But Kathleen Kennedy is all like, put another gay diverse woman in it, make it more fucking lame. And the Disney stock just keeps going down and down and down. And then Bob Iger is all like, no, what's going on with my stocks? No, Kathleen Kennedy. Ah!
In an entertainment landscape where studios typically avoid alienating any demographic, Zegler's approach was unprecedented. The reaction was swift and merciless. Audiences didn't just skip Snow White, they actively celebrated its failure. The film that reportedly cost over $200 million to produce and market barely scraped together $43 million on opening weekend, a financial catastrophe by any standard. Merchandise sat unopened on store shelves. Theme park characters went unvisited. Simpsons turns on you, magic you're done. Vanished. In a twist that shocked Hollywood insiders, even The Simpsons, owned by Disney itself, joined the pile-on. Their parody, Snowwoke, the Reimagining, featured a princess who rejects the prince's help while lecturing him about privilege and entitlement. Snow White was brought back to life by a lady doctor.
Now, fans are growing more concerned about Disney's new Snow White remake, mostly because of what the lead actress has been saying to the press. Rachel Zegler has been described as a walking PR disaster for Disney.
And she lived happily ever after. Well, she couldn't indulge in strenuous activities like handball, but otherwise, she was fine. Quipped the parody, mocking the awkward way modern remakes often try to fix classic stories rather than understand what made them work in the first place. For Disney, this represented something unprecedented, their own intellectual property publicly mocking their creative decisions. Sources close to the situation claim Disney executives were blindsided by the Simpsons episode, but couldn't stop it without causing even more controversy. The self-inflicted wound highlighted just how far the studio had fallen in the eyes of both audiences and creatives. Meanwhile, Rachel reportedly demanded Comedy Central pull the South Park episode, calling it defamatory and dangerously humiliating.
There's more. There's always more. Let's have a listen.
I mean, you know, the original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story.
Her demands were ignored, turning her into an even bigger target for comedians and commentators across the spectrum. What started as creative criticism had evolved into a full-blown cultural referendum on Hollywood's approach to updating classics. The Seven Dwarfs Who Disappeared. Perhaps nothing better exemplifies the creative missteps than what happened to the Seven Dwarfs. Characters so iconic, they're literally in the original title. When actor Peter Dinklage criticized the potential portrayal of little people in the remake, Disney panicked. Rather than thoughtfully updating the characters, they eliminated them entirely. The replacement? Magical creatures of various heights and appearances that test audiences described as forgettable and completely missing the point. Gone were Grumpy, Happy, Sleepy, Dopey, Bashful, Sneezy, and Doc. 7 distinct personalities that gave the original story its heart and humor. In their place stood generic fantasy beings that failed to connect with viewers on any emotional level. This decision backfired spectacularly.
There were reportedly not even going to be dwarfs either. Rainbow people instead. I thought it was a fan protest. And even the word dwarfs isn't mentioned in this remake. The film has people saying, don't mock Sleepy as a neurological condition. And Dopey isn't really dopey, that'd be rude.
When the little person actors spoke out, explaining that these were rare leading roles specifically written for performers of their stature. One actor pointedly remarked, "I can't go out for the Harrison Ford or George Clooney roles. That's not for me. And now these roles are taken away. I don't feel that's right." The irony was crushing. In attempting to avoid one type of controversy, Disney had created an even larger one, while simultaneously destroying what made the story special. Industry analysts point to this decision as the moment Disney lost control of the narrative, a perfect example of how corporate fear can lead to worse outcomes than thoughtful adaptation ever would. When Joe Rogan and Bill Maher agree, you've really messed up. When cultural commentators who rarely see eye to eye suddenly find common ground, something seismic has occurred. Both Joe Rogan and Bill Maher, approaching from different political perspectives, reached the same conclusion. Hollywood has lost its way. Maher skewered the contradiction at the heart of modern feminist remakes. These big, bad feminists now are telling us, that's ridiculous. How dare you want to meet a handsome prince and be swept off your feet and live happily ever after? No. You should want to be the prince. You should want to go out and fight the bad guys with a sword.
Peter Dinklage questioned why the story even included the characters at all.
They were very proud to cast a Latino actress as Snow White.
Yeah.
But you're still telling the story of Snow White.
Snow White, yeah.
Seven Dwarfs.
Sure.
So, look, take a step back and look at what you're doing.
Rogen focused on the business side, questioning how studios could alienate their core audience and still expect financial success. He pointed out that the central appeal of fairy tales like Snow White isn't just the story itself, but the emotional connection generations of viewers have with it. By dismissing that connection as outdated or problematic, Disney wasn't just updating a story, they were invalidating the emotional experience of their audience. Both commentators highlighted Snow White as the perfect case study in how not to update a classic. The consensus emerging across political lines was damning. It wasn't the modernization itself that audiences rejected, but the condescension with which it was delivered. Viewers felt lectured rather than entertained, preached to rather than transported. According to reports, even beloved Hollywood veteran Jack Black weighed in on the controversy. Insiders claim the actor, known for his ability to blend progressive values with mainstream appeal, confronted Zegler directly about her approach to the role.
He actually just erased the dwarfism side of it, the disability, like we're a disability group, you just erase that whole image.
Black reportedly believed that Snow White's failure went beyond controversial comments. He allegedly blamed both Zegler and her co-star Gal Gadot for delivering performances that lacked the heart and authenticity needed to bring beloved characters to life. While the truth behind these reports remains unconfirmed, they added another layer to the Snow White saga, suggesting even respected industry figures were questioning the creative choices made. What's undeniable is that rumors of conflict between established Hollywood names and the Snow White production team further damaged the film's already tarnished reputation. In an industry built on relationships and reputation, the whispers of behind-the-scenes turmoil painted a picture of a production in crisis from the very beginning. Empty theaters and empty promises. In March 2025,
Rachel Zegler just had one of the most disliked trailers in history with Snow White, but now after all the controversy, she's come out slamming Gal Gadot.
Reports emerged of Rachel Zegler attending a screening of her own movie with just a handful of friends in an otherwise empty theater. As her name appeared on screen, a friend reportedly called out, "Zegler," in a moment described by witnesses as painfully awkward, like a birthday party no one showed up to. Video of the nearly vacant theater spread across social media, becoming the final humiliating chapter in the Snow White saga. Once touted as Disney's next superstar, Zegler now faced the harsh reality that her big-budget vehicle had become a punchline rather than a box office success. While studio careers have survived single flops before, the combination of poor box office, public controversy, and cultural mockery has created what industry insiders are calling the Zegler effect, a cautionary tale for stars who alienate audiences before opening night. It's one thing to have a film underperform, it's quite another to become synonymous with Hollywood's disconnect from its audience.
While we're on the subject of actresses and awards and hacks, do we have a moment for Rachel Zegler and Snow White? Because there is an update.
The aftermath, Disney's reckoning. For a studio built on fairy tale magic, the message from audiences couldn't be clearer. Respect the stories that made you great. Disney's stock reportedly plummeted as investors questioned the wisdom of spending hundreds of millions to remake beloved classics only to strip away what made them beloved in the first place. Behind closed doors, major changes are rumored to be underway. Projects in development are being re-evaluated, scripts are being rewritten, and a new mandate has allegedly emerged. Entertain first, message second. Sources claim that upcoming remakes have already been revised to emphasize the original story's strengths rather than fixing perceived problems. What began as South Park's pointed satire has evolved into a full industry reckoning. The failure of Snow White didn't just impact one film, it forced the entire entertainment industry to question its approach to legacy content and audience expectations. As South Park, The Simpsons, Joe Rogan, Bill Maher, and millions of moviegoers demonstrated audiences aren't opposed to updated classics. They're opposed to being treated as though their nostalgia and fondness for the originals somehow makes them problematic. They want innovation that respects tradition, not lectures that dismiss it. In the end, Snow White didn't just fail at the box office, became something far worse in Hollywood, a punchline. And as Disney executives stare at empty theaters and unsold merchandise, the lesson is painfully clear. Sometimes, the fairest story of all is the one audience already love.